What's up, Hardcore Highlights family? If you thought you'd seen everything in professional wrestling, Jon Moxley just proved you dead wrong. Before we dive into this absolute carnage, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell because you do not want to miss any of the insanity we break down on this channel. Trust me, what I'm about to show you is going to blow your mind. Wednesday night on AEW Dynamite, we witnessed something that transcends typical wrestling drama. This wasn't just another promo. This wasn't just another confrontation. This was Jon Moxley systematically dismantling Don Callis in a way that left the entire wrestling world talking. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this might be one of the most brutal verbal and psychological destructions we've seen in modern wrestling. Let me set the scene for you. The tension between Moxley and the Callis family has been building for months. Don Callis, the self-proclaimed businessman, the man who always has an angle, the guy who's manipulated some of the biggest names in wrestling, walked into that ring thinking he had control. He had his usual swagger, that slimy confidence that makes you want to reach through the screen. But what he didn't account for was the fact that Jon Moxley doesn't play by anyone's rules. Moxley doesn't care about your plans, your schemes, or your corporate wrestling politics. The man is pure violence wrapped in unpredictability, and Wednesday night, Don Callis learned that lesson the hardest way possible. From the moment Moxley's music hit, you could feel the atmosphere shift. The crowd erupted because they know what Moxley represents. He's the antithesis of everything phony in wrestling. While other guys are worried about their brand deals and social media presence, Moxley is out there proving why he's the most dangerous man in AEW. And when he got that microphone, you could see it in Callis's eyes. That facade of control started cracking immediately. Moxley didn't waste time with pleasantries. He went straight for the jugular, and I mean that both literally and figuratively. He called out Callis for exactly what he is, a parasite who attaches himself to talent because he has none of his own. Think about it. Don Callis has spent his entire career riding coattails. He was managing people in Impact, worming his way into situations in New Japan, and now he's in AEW doing the same thing. But here's what makes this different. Moxley wasn't just exposing Callis as a manager or a businessman. He was exposing him as a fraud, a coward, and someone who hides behind actual fighters because he knows he could never be one himself. The beauty of this confrontation was in the details. Moxley didn't just cut a generic tough guy promo. He was surgical. He brought up specific instances where Callis had manipulated situations, where he'd betrayed people, where he'd put his own interests above everyone else's. And with every accusation, every call-out, you could see Callis trying to maintain that smarmy grin, trying to act like he was still in control, but his body language told a completely different story. The man was sweating. His hands were shaking. He kept adjusting his glasses, a classic tell that someone is rattled to their core. What made this even more compelling was the psychological warfare Moxley employed. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't screaming. His delivery was calm, calculated, almost conversational. And that made it 10 times more terrifying. When a man like Moxley, someone with his reputation for absolute brutality, speaks to you in that measured tone, you know violence is coming. It's not if, it's when. It's the difference between someone threatening to hurt you and someone explaining exactly how they're going to hurt you. The latter is infinitely more disturbing, and Moxley is a master of that approach. Callis tried to respond. Oh, he tried. He attempted to fall back on his usual tactics, that condescending tone, trying to talk his way out of the situation like he always does. But this is where things got absolutely beautiful from a storytelling perspective. Every time Callis opened his mouth, Moxley would cut him off, not by interrupting, but by simply speaking truth. It was like watching someone try to build a house of cards in a hurricane. Nothing Callis said had any foundation because Moxley had already destroyed every possible argument before it could even be made. The crowd was eating this up. You could hear them chanting, reacting to every word, every facial expression. That's when you know you're witnessing something special in wrestling. When the audience is so invested that they're hanging on every single syllable, that's the magic that keeps people coming back. And both men understood the assignment. Moxley was channeling years of frustration with corporate manipulation in wrestling, with people who prioritize business over the art form, with snake oil salesmen who promise the world and deliver nothing but disappointment. Then came the moment that everyone is going to remember. Moxley got right in Callis's face, close enough that you could see the absolute terror in Don's eyes, and he delivered what might be the line of the year. He told Callis that he spent his whole life being a leech, surviving by sucking the life out of actual talent, but now he's attached himself to the wrong host. Because Moxley isn't just going to shake him off. He's going to make an example out of him. He's going to show everyone what happens when you try to manipulate, control, or use Jon Moxley for your own agenda. The physical intimidation was off the charts. Moxley didn't touch Callis, and that's what made it so effective. He didn't need to. The threat of violence, the promise of what's coming, was far more powerful than any actual contact could have been in that moment. Callis was backing up, looking for an exit, looking for his usual protectors, but nobody was coming to save him. And that realization, that moment where Don Callis understood he was completely alone with the most dangerous man in wrestling, that's the kind of storytelling that creates legendary moments. But let's talk about the implications of this confrontation beyond just the immediate drama. This is part of a larger story that AEW has been building brilliantly. The Callas family, with all their machinations and schemes, have been positioning themselves as major power players in the company. They've got Kyle Fletcher under their influence, they've got connections throughout the roster, and Don has been playing 4D chess trying to consolidate power. But Moxley represents chaos. He's the element that can't be controlled, can't be bought, can't be manipulated. He's the wrench in every carefully laid plan, and that makes him the perfect antagonist to everything the Callas family represents. This confrontation also speaks to something deeper about Jon Moxley's character and why fans connect with him so intensely. In an era where wrestling can sometimes feel overly produced, where every word is scripted and every move is calculated for maximum social media impact, Moxley feels real. He feels authentic. Whether he's cutting a promo, having a death match, or just standing in the ring staring someone down, there's a rawness to everything he does. You believe that this is who he actually is, not a character he's playing. And that authenticity is rare and precious in modern wrestling. The way Moxley dismantled Callis verbally was reminiscent of some of the greatest promo workers in wrestling history, but with his own unique flavor. He's got the intensity of Stone Cold Steve Austin, the unpredictability of Brian Pillman, and the genuine tough guy credibility that you can't fake. When he says he's going to do something, you believe him because his track record speaks for itself. This is the guy who's had some of the most violent matches in modern wrestling history. He's bled more than most wrestlers ever will. He's put his body through absolute hell for this business. So when he promises violence to someone like Don Callis, it's not an empty threat, it's a guarantee. What I particularly appreciated about this segment was how it didn't rely on gimmicks or stunts to be effective. There were no run-ins at this moment, no weapons, no elaborate production elements. It was just two men, a microphone, and the raw power of storytelling. That's becoming increasingly rare in modern wrestling, where companies often feel the need to have something crazy happen every few minutes to keep attention. But this proved that if you've got the right people with the right story, you don't need any of that. The intensity, the stakes, the personal animosity, all of that was enough. The aftermath of this confrontation is going to be fascinating to watch unfold. Don Callis is not the type to take this kind of humiliation lying down. He's going to retaliate, probably through proxies, because let's be real, he's not getting in the ring with Moxley himself. But that's what makes this story so compelling. How do you fight back against someone who doesn't fear anything or anyone? How do you manipulate someone who sees through every scheme? These are the questions that are going to drive this narrative forward, and I am here for every second of it. We also have to talk about the performance aspect here. Jon Moxley's promo work is often overlooked because people focus so much on his in-ring style and his willingness to work stiff and bloody. But the man is an elite talker. He understands pacing, he understands how to build emotion, he knows when to raise his voice and when to get quiet for maximum impact. And in this confrontation, he was operating at the absolute peak of his abilities. Every word felt meaningful. Every pause had purpose. This is masterclass stuff, and younger wrestlers should be studying this to understand how to cut an effective promo. Don Callis, to his credit, played his role perfectly as well. He's one of the best sleazy manager characters in wrestling today, and his ability to make audiences genuinely dislike him is a testament to his skill. But this night, he was completely out of his depth, and he knew it. The character knew it, and you could see that panic bleeding through. That's brilliant work because it sets up future chapters in this story. Callis isn't going to forget this embarrassment, and the desperation that comes from being exposed like this is going to make him even more dangerous and unpredictable. The wrestling world has been buzzing non-stop about this confrontation since it happened. Social media exploded. Wrestling forums are dissecting every second. Video clips are going viral. And that's exactly what you want from a major wrestling angle. You want people talking, debating, anticipating what comes next. This confrontation accomplished all of that and more. It reminded everyone why AEW has become such a major player in the wrestling industry. When they commit to long-term storytelling with characters that fans are invested in, they can create moments that rival anything in wrestling history. Looking at the bigger picture, this is also about Jon Moxley reclaiming his position at the top of AEW. There was a period where he stepped back, dealt with personal issues with incredible bravery and honesty, and then returned stronger than ever. But since coming back, he's been on a mission to remind everyone that AEW is his house. The championship reigns, the faction wars, all of it has been building to this moment where Moxley is the ultimate authority in AEW, not because of a corporate position, but because nobody can stand against him when he decides to make a stand. This confrontation with Don Callis is personal, yes, but it's also symbolic. It represents the soul of AEW fighting against those who would corrupt it for personal gain. Moxley has always positioned himself as someone who cares about the purity of wrestling, about giving fans real, unfiltered competition and storytelling. Callas represents the opposite: manipulation, shortcuts, using people as pawns. This isn't just a wrestling feud, it's a philosophical war about what professional wrestling should be, and that adds layers of depth that make it so much more engaging than just good guy versus bad guy. The question now is, where do we go from here? Because after a confrontation this intense, this personal, there has to be a payoff. My prediction is that we're building towards something massive, probably involving the entire Callis family and whatever allies they can muster against Moxley and his crew. We could be looking at a war game situation, a blood and guts match, something that allows for the absolute chaos that this story demands. Whatever it is, it needs to be violent, it needs to be definitive, and it needs to give Moxley the opportunity to back up every word he said in this confrontation. What Jon Moxley did to Don Callis on this night will be remembered as one of the defining moments of this era in AEW. It showcased everything that makes wrestling special when it's done right: compelling characters, personal stakes, brilliant psychology, and the promise of violence that keeps fans on the edge of their seats. This is the kind of storytelling that creates lifelong fans and reminds people why they fell in love with professional wrestling in the first place. If you missed this confrontation, go back and watch it immediately. And stay tuned to Hardcore Highlights, because we're going to be following every twist and turn of this story as it continues to unfold. This is just the beginning, and trust me, things are about to get even more insane.